So you're thinking of leaving Canada, maybe to chase lower taxes, better weather, and more freedom or adventure. Well, here at Blueprint, we've helped a lot of people move abroad, and we've heard firsthand about the surprises that come after. And in this video, I'm going to break down the 5 biggest regrets Canadians have after leaving. Some of them you can fix, but others are irreversible. The first is money and access problems. Many Canadians think they can move abroad and keep their finances running exactly the same. In reality, the moment you become a non-resident, your entire financial setup can start to break down or can change drastically. Banking is often the first problem. Many platforms such as Simple and EQ Bank, for example, will freeze or close your accounts once you update your tax residency to become a non-resident. And a lot of the big banks in Canada have a lot of restrictions for non-residents as well. One permanent change of address can leave you locked out of your own money. And investments can also get very complicated when you move abroad. You might have to move your investments along with you abroad, but that can create new challenges such as, say, higher fees perhaps, or more complex tax reporting. There is no one-size-fits-all solution here. And it really depends a lot on where you move to. Credit is another issue. Canadian banks generally will not issue new credit cards or loans to non-residents. Your Canadian credit file can go stale over time as well, and in a new country, you are starting from zero. No credit history can make it harder to do things like rent an apartment, get a car loan, or secure financing. And your Canadian health coverage ends quickly. In most provinces, it stops after 6 months. You will likely need private expat insurance or coverage in your new country, both of which can be quite expensive and confusing and may exclude things like pre-existing conditions. A single medical emergency abroad could potentially cost thousands and thousands of dollars. And there are some smaller but equally frustrating details. For example, your driver's license might not transfer to your new country, your insurance history could also reset, a change of address can trigger problems with the CRA, your insurer, and other government agencies. It might feel like your financial identity disappears overnight. And this should make you realize that leaving Canada is not just about booking a flight, it is about disconnecting from the systems that quietly kept your life running smoothly. The second major regret are tax and investment surprises. If you think leaving Canada always means leaving taxes behind, think again. Unless you plan and execute very carefully, you might be walking into a tax nightmare. Now let's start with the departure tax. When you become a non-resident, the CRA treats it like you sold most of your investments, even if you didn't. That means unrealized gains on things like stocks, crypto, and real estate, excluding your primary residence, becomes immediately taxable. You also have to file Form T1161 and other disclosures, or you could potentially face steep penalties. Think of the departure fee like a breakup fee with a ruthless partner. The CRA says, well, if you're leaving me, I'm cashing out everything you owe. Then you have your accounts like your TFSA and your FHSA. There's huge changes for that. You can keep them, but you can't contribute once you're a non-resident. And if you slip up, there's a 1% penalty per month on the excess. Plus, these accounts lose their tax-free status in many countries that you move to, so be very careful of that. And if you're saving for your kids' education, our ESPs also become very tricky and complicated, with no new contributions allowed and very complicated tax reporting, as well as rules for the grants depending on where your child lives, and that can get very tricky as well. And if you still have income from Canada, you could expect withholding tax on a lot of it. For example, 25% off the top for things like rental income, pensions, RSPs, and RIF withdrawals, and dividends. You could file forms like NR6 or use Section 217 to recover some of it, but it's quite complex and easy to mess up. And if you're selling Canadian property, the CRA might hold up to 50% until you file for a clearance certificate. And finally, expect higher accounting costs. Many expats need 2 accountants, one in Canada and one in their new country. You may have to track worldwide income in both places. And if you're planning to leave Canada or already have, this stuff gets complex really fast. And here at Blueprint Financial, we specialize in helping Canadians build tax-efficient plans for living abroad. Our teams include CPAs, cross-border experts, and real humans who care. As we like to say here, build the life you want with the right blueprint, so visit our website to book a discovery call. All right, now our third biggest regret, which are lost benefits, pensions, and status. One of the biggest regrets people have after leaving Canada is realizing they might have given up some long-term benefits they spent decades earning. Now let's start with the pensions. The Canada Pension Plan, or the CPP, will still pay you abroad, but you have to be wary of the withholding tax as well as your new country's rules on how they're going to tax it. The real shock for many is the Old Age Security, or OAS. To receive any OAS while living overseas, you must have lived in Canada for at least 20 years after the age of 18, or at least 10 years if your new country has a social security agreement with Canada. If you fall short of that, your OAS could be reduced or stopped completely. And this is one of the most expensive surprises for retirees who leave without checking the rules. So make sure you know exactly how many years you have towards your OAS qualification before leaving Canada. GIS is even more unforgiving. The Guaranteed Income Supplement ends entirely just 6 months after you leave Canada. So for low-income retirees, this can mean losing thousands of dollars each year. Families might also feel the loss as well. Things like the Canada Child Benefit ends when you become a non-resident. So do GST, HST credits, employment insurance, and most provincial support programs. Even if your children are Canadian citizens, living abroad means losing access to these payments. You also lose a lot of your political voice. Non-residents can't vote in most provincial or municipal elections. You may still pay tax on property in Canada, but you will have no say in the policies that affect it. And then there's the little-known citizenship. Children born abroad to Canadian citizens are still Canadian themselves, but their children, which would be your grandchildren, might not be. The right to pass on citizenships ends after one generation born outside of Canada. The next biggest regrets, let's talk about some irreversible moves. Leaving Canada might feel exciting in the moment, but some choices lead to no do-overs, especially when it comes to residency and citizenship. If you are a permanent resident of Canada and not a citizen, you must spend at least 730 days in Canada every 5 years to keep your PR status. And if you miss that requirement, you will lose it. Reapplying these days to PR can be very difficult, particularly if your ties to Canada are weak. And many people who leave settle abroad on tourist visas or temporary permits, and that is a risky foundation. If you, say, lose your job, or a relationship ends, or if you have a health crisis, you might be forced to leave your new country with few options. Visa rules can also change with little warning, putting your ability to stay at risk. And be wary because in some countries like China or Singapore, for example, dual citizenship is not allowed. You may have to renounce your Canadian citizenship to gain theirs, and that decision is permanent. There is no second passport and no automatic return. Coming back to Canada is also not always straightforward. The CRA will generally consider you a resident again once you re-establish significant residential ties, but this can take time and documentation. You may face some serious healthcare wait periods, and you will often be rebuilding from scratch with no rental history, no recent credit history, no driving history for insurance, and no immediate access to certain benefits. So be wary of changes that are irreversible to make or are very difficult to come back from, and factor that into your decision of moving. The fifth regret are emotional and lifestyle regrets. Even if the numbers look perfect, say there's lower taxes, cheaper rent, sunshine year-round, the emotional cost of leaving Canada can really sneak up and surprise you. And this is often the hardest one to see because these aren't measured in anything tangible like dollars, but they can often hit the hardest. At first, it might feel like a fresh start. Then the distance sinks in. You might miss birthdays, weddings, and quiet afternoons with aging parents. Friendships back home fade into occasional messages. You'll probably meet a lot of new people abroad, but deep relationships in a different culture can take upwards of years to build. And daily life is also harder in ways you never expected. Language barriers turn simple tasks into stressful ones. A doctor's visit, a bank transaction, or dealing with local bureaucracy can leave you mentally drained. You might also always feel like an outsider, never fully in the system. Then might come the comparisons. For all its negatives, Canada is safe, clean, stable, and familiar with great infrastructure. Your new country might have its charms, but also its frustrations. Things like noisy streets at night, slower service, inconsistent utilities, or different ideas about privacy and personal space and fairness. The very quirks that seemed exciting at first can become daily irritations. And even if everything on paper looks right, life might not feel right abroad. Because wherever you travel, there you are. So it might be something internal that you'll have to look at, but in any case, you will learn a lot about yourself by going through this process. And now, if you've heard all of that and you're still thinking, screw it, I'm leaving Canada anyways, then you're our kind of person. Because here at Blueprint Financial, we help Canadians leave Canada the smart way. We handle everything from departure tax to protecting your investments, and we've helped clients move around the world to help reduce taxes, avoid costly mistakes, and keep the benefits they've earned. Asia, Europe, South America, Latin America, Antarctica, wherever you're headed, we'll help you leave on your terms and without regrets. Okay, maybe not Antarctica. Because this is bigger than just taxes. It's your entire life setup. Because once you step out of Canada, everything changes. If you're serious about making the move, let's make sure you do it right. So visit our website to book your discovery call. Like and subscribe if this helped, and check out the next video YouTube has lined up for you on the screen here.